Good morning, friends and colleagues here. I have a bad throat because I think there's too much dust in the place where I live at the moment because there's a construction work going on this building. Hopefully it will be temporary. The headlines of saying that the tallest vertical garden itself is not an important factor because height of a building comes not because of you want to build the tallest structure in the world, but it has a lot to do with economics, where have been the problem of any building that we do. And I think I worked with Mr. Bauer in year 1990, 91, 92 to 94 on Kandalema Hotel. That was something that was unique. I think there are a few people here who have also worked with us at that time. And if you ask them, any of them, I said we had a great time, but definitely I'm not going to repeat it. Right. And this building got inspired by that. I have 3 sons, were 2 of them architects. One went in a different direction and became a computer expert. And they're definitely much smarter than me. So most of the work is done by them, and I take the credit for it. But the reason why we want to do this is definitely I had a lot to do with. This is in Rajagiriya, which is not very far from Colombo. And we have already done 3 tower buildings in the same vicinity. They're about 32 stories high, most of them. But this one went up to almost 50 stories actually now. And we also thought about doing this and try to find an investor who could invest some money into doing this, but it became impossible because the things that we are trying to do is very difficult to convince investors who are mainly interested in maximizing the profit to get involved in something like this. I mean, I'm not saying that this is not going to make money. It's going to make a lot of money, just like anything else, but it doesn't fall into the normal calculations of an investor because it is all new. And we could not convince anybody by doing this. It is not going to cost anything extra and will almost bring the same profit as anything else, but a much better building. So we started doing this about 5-6 years ago. It took a long time. I think some of the architects who are here knows the problems that we had in getting planning approval. I think we had a lot of things which you had to explain before we got that kind of thing, because it was something that is new. We had the same problem in 1990s with Kandalema Hotel anyway. But today it has become one of the symbols of how a hotel should be done. In this, I think I'm not going to talk about architecture because even though I'm an architect, I have very little. I cannot talk about architecture because I don't know what architecture means. One thing after about 40 years of practicing it was probably. And, but technologically, we try to make an energy efficient building and also reduce the carbon footprint, which are standard phrases that have been used in this kind of thing. And in the process of I think the slides are actually measured to certain few seconds, and I can't keep up with that. It's going faster than what I say things. We have actually used many means of reducing and reusing by reusing different resources that we have. Like, for instance, I think rainwater harvesting, but I think it's a wrong place to start. We are actually using the grey water recycled in the building and also collecting the rainwater that is you cannot depend on, but to a certain extent which you can collect, and recycling it to a level we have been told by the subcontractors who are doing it that give a clean water to a level of something like under 10 BOD. So it's almost like potable water which is there. And we chlorinate it and use it for irrigating the whole building. All the trees are actually drip irrigated, and also using the same water to flush all the toilets, and which is a very large amount of water that we normally use in a residential building. And we also, the rest of the water which is actually going through toilets goes through another process of sewage treatment plant. And that water is actually cleansed up to a point where it's about under 20 BOD, which we are using at ground level irrigation, not in the building. And by doing that, we are reducing the intake from the national grid by about 40 to 45%. Not completely, but 40 to 45%. In the same way, we are also using certain means of reducing the electrical, the power that we use by using about almost 1,300 square meters of solar panels right above the roof, which is about 180 meters above ground. And this will give us something like 180 kilowatts of power, which would, we have an agreement with the electricity board. The electricity board has actually in Sri Lanka, who is the sole supplier of electricity, has agreed with recent times in understanding the necessity for saving electricity to buy back whatever the electricity that anybody could produce, and we reuse it. That doesn't mean that we get money for it, but when we are reusing it, that amount of money is deducted. So finally, at the end of the day, we actually save about 40 to 45% of electricity that we take from the national grid once again. And there are many other features. The plants and the terraces also reduces the amount of heat gain in this building. The windows are all set back. It's a typical Sri Lankan design, and it is working for Sri Lanka, we hope. And there are no, like a previous speaker said about curtain walling, where there's direct sunlight falling on them. So there's hardly any heat gain from the sun's rays falling on glass because they're set back. and the terraces are deep enough to provide that. And also trees provide additional cover for direct sunlight to come in. But we still believe that there will be enough light within the building for it to do the day-to-day things. And it is cross-ventilated, unlike most of the other apartment buildings that have been built in Sri Lanka. We have cross-ventilated the building, which would work either way, whether it is going through the building, into the building, or out of the building, depending on the direction of the wind, whether it is a negative or positive pressure outside. And we also have created a situation where inside the building that you look out, when you look out, you always see through these planted terraces, so that you get a feeling that you're almost at ground level all the time. Unlike a tall building where you see only this blue sky, and I think in England, the buildings that were built in 1960s, 70s, for a different set of people, created huge problems of what you call high-rise blues, where people even committed suicide, the kids became very unruly, and there was huge amount of vandalism in those things. But here, what we have done is that when you look out through trees, and you always get the feeling that you're almost at ground level. It's almost like what we have shown here now. And they are large format apartments, which is about 2,300, 2,400 square feet, which is almost like a house. And I think you can have a look at what these images are showing is what we are planning to achieve. There will be the thing is, we also have gone in for the plants that we are going to plant here for different reason. I mean, there's a dual purpose. Some of the trees that we are putting emphasis on is the locally or endemic species of mangoes, for instance. One reason is that because of the imported mango varieties like Kattakurama and Village, people have stopped growing the local mango trees, and some of them are actually on an endangered list. Right. So we are trying to promote the local varieties and try to create an interest in the people to make them understand that extinction is permanent, so we have to look after the trees that we have. And hopefully we believe that we'll be successful. There are a whole lot of things that we have in this slide. What you see is a swimming pool, which is about 30 feet by 12 feet wide, actually projecting out of the building, which can be built. I think there are a number of things will get built. That you can step into from your living room itself and a private swimming pool, right? And we also have a common other amenities, a whole lot of them provided elsewhere. And we are surrounded by water in any case, right? So rainwater that's falling on but have not been collected goes into the Oya, which has happened right throughout, for millions of years most probably. And from the time the Oya has been created. It's at the moment, the surrounding area is almost in 60 years, because I can remember, I think the previous lecturer speaker told us that you may not have seen some of the nagulas and things like those, but I have used them when I was a kid because we had paddy fields. And it stopped in 1953 because of a number of reasons, bad decisions made by different people who actually created a situation where salvinia was introduced to Sri Lanka, and also things like tank-dwelling fish were introduced to Sri Lanka. All those things actually had disastrous effect. And today, the worst thing that is happening in Sri Lanka is that there's a huge amount of aquarium fish which are very invasive. When they grow to a certain size, people can't keep them in their houses, so they come and dump them in waterways and things like that. And they are growing at a very much faster rate than our local ones, which have never been tank-dwelling fish. They were fish that survived in canals and streams and things like that. Because all the tanks or have been man-made. So there was no natural evolutionary process of producing a tank-dwelling fish. But we did introduce in 1950s, 60s, and today we are paying for it. And majority of the endemic species of fish are now vanishing. So all these things have been taken into account by us in a very small way. And hopefully by creating an awareness among the people. And this small way will be big enough for people to understand that we should look after it. Because at the moment, the idea of environmental kind of safeguards that we should introduce are not that well received. And I think a lot of things has to be done by the authorities that are there, not by individuals, because individuals do take this kind of thing very seriously, and they become, when you're talking about a green man, he's taken as a lunatic most of the time, an extremist, and who is actually talking about something that nobody else understood. So the whole lot of things has to be done in Sri Lanka. And we are in a very small way. We introduced this building with a dual purpose. One thing is to make a profit, and the other thing is to create awareness among people, and which will continue for people to understand and become much more sensitive in looking after our environment. And it's very difficult to explain what the building is. I think architects, very few architects who can talk about their own buildings. And I cannot talk about a building that I'm working on, because we work because that's the thing that we should do. And so it comes with a huge amount of knowledge, and also through ignorance, really, because ignorance is bliss most of the time. And we do things which are right through ignorance rather than through knowledge most of the time. Anyway, we are trying to reverse a process which has a huge effect, like a juggernaut. And I don't know how that is possible. Now, for instance, this is called the environmentally friendly building, and we have huge amount of lights and things like that we talked about earlier. None of those things are here. And so I think I will stop my lecture most abruptly, like everything else in Sri Lanka. and most probably answer questions when the time comes, if you have any, about this building, what you are doing, and how it came by. And this, one thing that I have to tell you is that I'm the first architect who became an investor in my own building with my family, because it was not possible any other way. Thank you very much.